What is your book about?
It's the biography of the film. And I concentrate much more on before the film, what makes the film, 2 big chapters on reading of the film, and then giving it a bit of perspective afterwards. When I was 22 years old, Anthony Cheetham at Sphere said, would I like to do a novelisation of a film? I was reading books with him and recommending books such as Speed by William Burroughs Jr. and things like that. Pushing in more or less on erotic books and that. And so I said, fine. So he said, there's a film that I've made, which is going to come out soon, called Performance. Do you want to write that as a novelisation? I said, okay, show it to me. So I went into a studio with Donald Cammell, and he showed me a version, which is not the final version. I saw other shots, which I also relate in the book, shots which are missing now. And a couple of weeks afterwards, it was after I started writing, I had to get on with it straight away. Warner's pulled it because like they were pulling everything. They've got their own man who does these things, they have a contract, so they pulled it. So instead, a couple of months later, Anthony turned around to me and said, do you want to write another one called The Honeymoon Killers? I said, fine. So I wrote The Honeymoon Killers and made it into a cult novel instead, particularly in France. So and I wrote that in a week as well, and I've never done that again ever since. I've written a book so fast. So that's where it started, Performance. Then of course, after it had come out, and when I've seen it a few times, it vanished because such things as DVDs, television showings weren't there either. Then eventually television showings came and videos were around, so I taped it off television. And I was teaching at Medway College. I was teaching film and media, which wasn't called that at the time, but that's what it was effectively. And so I used to show it to my students. And so I got to see the film many, many times, and I was thinking about the film, making notes all the time. I was thinking one day perhaps, it was mainly notes for the students, to tell them about ideas that were going on. And because I'm a cross-cultural person, I'm interested in literature, interested in theatre, interested in film, interested in music, interested in gangsters. I was kind of getting other things that other people wouldn't necessarily see. And then, about 17, 20 years ago, David Barraclough said to me, he was working at Titan at the time, he said, what book would you really like to write? I said, I'll do a book on performance. It didn't work. And then a couple of years ago, he phoned me and said, you still up for the idea? And I said, well, I'm working on a book at the moment, but yes. This film doesn't date at all. You see, for example, I watched Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy the other day, and I was thinking, we're so sophisticated now, you could redo that dialogue there. This dialogue here, you don't have to play with. You know it's set in the 60s, you understand that, and you understand lots of things about it, but at the same time, you don't have to play with the dialogue, because this is not realism. This is its own film. It is a film, full stop. It says it's a film from the very word go. I am a film. And therefore you're not expecting it. Of course, but you're very lucky that no one says the word groovy or something like that. That would immediately date it. In a version of one of the scripts, you can see the word groovy, and sometimes when you see interviews with Donald Cammell, he will say groovy or some word, and you think, no, you're dating yourself. But it's not in the film at all. Nothing in the film dates it from that point of view. To make it in a bad sense, it's got a date to it, but it's still, because of the ideas that are floating and the way they're shifting, it remains there all the time, I think. That's how I see it, and I've seen it a lot of times, and particularly in the last year. I had about 50,000 words of notes, I thought, okay, I should be on my way. And then as I started doing it, I realised, in fact, there was enormous gaps. So I started really thinking it through again and things like that. But I'm quite pleased, in fact, that I made it down to a 300-page book rather than a 500-page, because I didn't want it to be too academic, but I wanted it to be intelligent. I wanted it to say things. I wanted to have 3 ways of being seen. I want it to be for young people who've never even seen it before, have heard about it, or know Mick Jagger and whatever, or heard about the counterculture aspect of it. They can watch it with no backup at all, and for them to kind of come at it. Then it was also for the students, by writing lots and lots of things into
that
it.
kind of Armageddon, that kind of apocalyptic feel that happened in the end of the 60s.
That was the documentary.
It's the promo part. I wanted them to be able to take it and to be able to use it. I don't close the text down at any point. I don't close the reading down of it. It's all open, so that they can then take on things and run with them even further. And the third one is for the people who've seen the film so many times and you think they know it very well, and then they come at you afterwards and go, I didn't see that. It's everyone's film. And I also, by doing what I've done, is I've updated it, I've taken it from its period of what they were about when they, at that period itself. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to see it with hindsight, saying, oh, you know, if you read Artaud in now, this is how you're going to understand it. So I wanted it to be very much to read that way. They're finding the sound now. So, what's the question again?
Just say that, is it Rogue's film or is it Camel's film?
Right.
And you're saying it's neither.
It's neither film. So I wanted to take what each of them was doing really before they made the film. So we take the history of where Nick Rogue's coming from, the films he made, whether it be with Truffaut, whether it be with Corman, whether it be with Dick Lester, Petulia, or whether it be with Clive Donner, Caretaker. So therefore you get ideas coming there. And then you've got what Donald Camel's history was before that. And then of course you've got what Jagger's history, what James Fox's history, and that is the context for the film really, for the simple reason, if it hadn't been for Redlands, this film would probably never been made. Because it backfired on the police. They thought they'd suppressed them, instead of which they had created a buzz where money could be raised on Mick Jagger, and therefore the film happened. And Mick Jagger, what people think of him now, what I think of him now doesn't necessarily matter. At the time, he was, old was he, 24 or so? Remarkably good. I mean, just remarkably good. If you read the book, I kind of point out things which people haven't necessarily pointed out before, and he himself would be surprised by it. But they were relaxed about it. It's like a home movie, a glorified home movie, and he probably was surprised himself about certain things, how they worked, or yeah, he might have dismissed it himself or very unsure about it. But in reality, some of the games and some of the mischief that was going on by everyone concerned, including the main protagonists, and the tensions that were going on, they became part of the film. It's a film that can never be remade. You only get these remakes of things. It can't be remade because it's based on errors and misuse. And I talk about that in the book, really, in the sense that there's things which they did either accidentally and they ran with it, or they did on purpose, but instead of kind of calling the shot to a halt and say, you know, oh, I fluffed that line or something, they were left. And some of those things are in the edit rather than the good things. And it's done, that's what makes it an interesting film. Everyone is coming at it a bit squiffy, and they all happen to just slot together and it worked. It might well be a myth that there's another version around. It might have just vanished altogether. And people move around a lot in their life and don't really take their possessions and their archives and everything with them, or they put them in store, the store gets broken into, the store gets flooded. This is what happens. So, and because it wasn't liked by Warner Brothers, they probably didn't preserve a copy very well. Who knows? I don't know. But we're now so far away, we can't really solve some of the issues that are there anymore. Well, we could if one was really going to kind of do real detective work, but in reality it didn't really work like that. And, you know, I had 300 pages that I was working with, and I still just kind of was cramming and throwing things left, right and centre all over, there. If I'd had 500, pages, then I would have gone even further. I would have asked for another year and then really gone in again. But then would have been a different book altogether, and I would have insisted on certain other things. But instead of which I wanted it to be entertaining, but also say lots of things. It's a biography. It's not an academic treatise on it, but it does have lots of academic things in there at the same time.